Welcome to Legacy Cast, where we talk about your story, your way, and what are you doing to make sure that people know about you many generations from now. Welcome, Legacy Cast listeners. This is your program, Legacy Cast, where we speak to interesting people from all around the world. We have a daily program here that talks to people discussing what they're doing in their lives that is making a difference not only in their community around them, but in the lives of those that they come in contact with, and making a lasting mark that's going to be passed on for multiple generations. That's what we do here with the program. And I have with me today a good friend, John Renken, a fellow veteran brother, and he has a very interesting story with what he does with different things within the travel realm. And so, John, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot, buddy. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I enjoyed the little time we had, before we came on the program. You were sort of giving me some of the ins and outs of what you do there. And I mean, that's just some really interesting stuff that you're doing. And, I think that a lot of people don't really necessarily correlate the idea of travel and perhaps what their legacy is. But to me, that actually is a perfect connection, because so many of us are working. We work very hard, and we're working, just busy hours and crazy hours. And, what are we doing for that work-life balance? What are we doing to really add value and flavor to our lives? And that's kind of where you come in, right?
Yeah, so I'd even take that a step further and say that besides paying our bills and just making a living to survive, we actually work all those crazy hours for the express reason to go and travel and have great life experiences.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you're thinking about your legacy and how that kind of comes into play as far as, your personal and business life, what would you say that looks like to you, John?
I love the idea of legacy because I'm trying to leave a legacy for my children more than anything. And one of the things that my children have learned through the businesses that I've done and what I'm doing now is that they don't have to be somebody else's slave and make somebody else rich. That if they have the passion and they have the dedication, that they can take an idea or they can take something that they love and they can push it into an entrepreneurial aspect and make a great living at it. And the legacy I really want for my children is that they have great life experiences all the way from their age now until their parents and grandparents. And they take that and they live their lives and they live it for themselves and not working for somebody else.
Yeah, and ultimately that's why we become entrepreneurs, is because we don't want to build that legacy for somebody else. We want to build it for ourselves. It's kind of what drives us as entrepreneurs. I've found, and so with that kind of thinking in mind, would you feel like it's pretty important for other people, especially those listening today, for them to spend time and energy considering what their legacy is going to look like and how they're going to get there?
I think there's no greater question. It's not about just surviving. It's not about just living our lives. If we're not leaving behind something for our children, our grandchildren, then we're really not living a fulfilled life. We've got to think that way, in my opinion, because it's just kind of like, in the military, we learn you never leave a place worse than you found it. I think that applies to life in general. I should leave my children's lives better than mine was. And that's truly legacy, man. That's kind of what I look at when I'm doing stuff. How's it going to affect my children, and how can it improve their life?
Sure. And I like how you're putting that, because that ties very much into, especially with what I do in my regular business in finance, is looking at how can you take what you were given to start with, and then how are you able to build on that, and then when you leave it to your children, it's more than you had to begin with, and then they can build on it. And then when they leave it to their children, again, it's greater. It's something that here, especially in the States, it's such a young country that we kind of have that temporary mentality, maybe the instant gratification mentality, because the United States has only been for a little over 250 years, and it's not like in Europe where people can live in a home that has been in existence for almost 1,000 years. It's a young country, and so people don't necessarily think in those terms, and it's something that I absolutely believe should be changed here, especially because not enough people think that way, the way that we were talking about.
Yeah, when you look at that, I just don't understand how we don't think that way. There's a proverb that says a man who doesn't leave an inheritance for his children's children is a wicked man.
Right.
So, and that directly ties into leaving a legacy. It's not just physical, like monetarily, but it's also life lessons. It's also an inheritance of their mindset, an inheritance of taking them from where they're at and helping them grow further and faster than what you did as a kid and then as an adult.
Sure.
And I just can't even think about how people don't think in that context.
And I appreciate that you first of all, I wanted to mention, I appreciate you mentioning the Proverbs 13:22. That actually is the mantra of my business. And when I meet with people, that's why I help people the way that I do, is because I want to leave that legacy for them to pass on to their children and their grandchildren. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Right.
But in addition, it's so important, especially a lot of people when they're thinking legacy, you kind of touched on it, is it's not just a financial thing. It's also what you're teaching your kids. It's what you're doing in the community to make the community better. It's the volunteering that you do, or helping out somebody else that's in need. That's creating a legacy because you're passing that knowledge. And what I'll tell a lot of people, especially when I'm doing some of the seminars, is your legacy really is kind of like your story. It's your story being told your way, the way that you want people to hear about you many, many years from now. And so it's really us getting a chance to have a little taste of immortality, as it were, and we're able to control that by what we're doing today, because that is going to resonate many generations on. Now with your business, how do you correlate your legacy kind of mindset, because it really is a mindset and a lifestyle? How do you correlate that into what you're doing?
So there's a couple of ways that I do this, and the first thing is that I've taken my passion for travel and my passion for life experiences, and I've applied it to the way that I'm working with my children. So, for example, instead of buying a bunch of stuff that my kids are going to maybe unpack and use for a couple of weeks on Christmas, I buy them one or two gifts, and then we actually plan a trip together, and we go and we have great life experiences. And what I want my kids to get out of this is that they're not materialistic in that things matter more, but that experience matters more. And when they look back in their life, who remembers what they got for Christmas when they were 10 or 15 years old? I don't know about you, but I don't remember.
Very true.
But I do remember when my grandparents came up and picked me up and took me to Disney World for Christmas. I remember that still to this day. I think I was like 8 years old. And my kids look back at their life, and they don't ever talk about the gifts that they got. They talk about the experiences we've had. Badlands, when we went to North Dakota, Niagara Falls. And so the way that I'm taking what I do with travel and my passion for travel is that I'm instilling that into my kids to where they're not thinking about material things, but they're thinking about experiences, life experiences.
Right. That's awesome. And that's really an outstanding way to raise your children, because they're looking at it from an experiential standpoint and not a materialistic standpoint. And that's creating a much larger lesson, really, to be honest, because you're teaching them the experience side of it and what they can do to help other people in turn.
Yep.
And so that's giving them a good hands-on firsthand lesson that's going to be able to be passed on.
Yeah.
So if you were to be thinking about your business in particular, John, and its future from the CEO standpoint. What would you say maybe a few things are that you really kind of think about a lot, perhaps even keep you up at night if it's that way?
Yeah, I think the thing that keeps me up the most is realizing that things are so experiential and that's really what matters. Is I need people to understand that travel doesn't have to be expensive. Having life experiences doesn't have to be expensive. And so when I think about what can I do, I'm thinking more about how can I relay the message to people that they can travel the world and check things off their list, and they don't have to break the bank to do it. I think about that tomorrow's not promised, that especially because I live in a military community, this has been, driven home so many times for me. I've lost great friends in the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict, in Africa and these kind of places. And we think that we've got time to do the things that are on our list. But the truth is we don't know if we have that time. And so I'm trying to relay a message to people that I was raised with that I don't agree with, which is, go to school, get a good job, work really hard for 40 years, retire, and then check the things off your list because you deserve it. I want to change that script and change that mentality to, why don't you work for yourself, earn an amazing living, and do what you can do right now? Don't wait, because you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. And if we understand that, we understand that experiences really would drive us more and teach us more. I think that it would change a lot of what we see going on in America. And it would change our family lives. It would change our personal lives. And it for sure will change our business life.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And, we so often see cases, even in our own families, people that will do, as you're saying, they have the career that they do for many years, they retire, and then what do they end up doing? Their health has declined because they're at a certain age. They really don't get out of the house. They spend a lot of time, sitting in that easy chair, doing not very much, and which further, causes their health to decline, and it shaves a lot of years off their life. When really they could have built all of those memories, during their better years when they were healthier, when they're younger, and make a lot more to show for it.
Yeah, and the reason why most people don't is because they have this assumption that travel is so expensive that that it would break the bank. I don't have the flexibility to do it right now. Whatever the story is, but it all really boils down to money. I tell people all the time that there's only one legitimate excuse that for people not to travel, and it's money. It's never time, because time is a symptom of not having money. So if you're working 60, 70 hours a week, you don't have any time because you don't have any money.
That's true. And so often, the things that we really, really care about the most, those are the things we're going to make the time for. We're going to do whatever we have to make it happen. And so, that really is a paradigm shift that people need to come into. You're touching on, the way that it has been where, we hear from our parents and our teachers and so forth that you get the job, you get the education, you get the job, and then you do that for so many years. That all kind of falls into what I have lovingly dubbed the big lie in my world, because it's kind of like in the finance space that you're supposed to do things a certain way, and you've been told that by people that don't have anything. But if it actually worked, they would have something, and so why are we listening to that kind of a mindset?
Don't get me started, bro. Don't get me started.
It's the scarcity mindset, and it's so pervasive, and it blows my mind how many people buy into that scarcity mindset instead of the prosperity mindset. And you're in the perfect space to show that scarcity mindset is completely wrong.
Yeah,
and you can prove it.
Yep, absolutely. So I learned this lesson in the Army, and it's stuck with me all the years, that I just don't take advice from people who don't have what I want.